All right, let's try a little experiment. When I say the word Maine, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it's a very specific set of images, right? Kind of that postcard perfect New England vibe. It's a place we feel like we know. But let's dig in and see what's really going on beyond that famous Vacationland nickname.
First up, it's gotta be the coast. I mean, it's pretty much impossible to think of Maine without picturing that jagged, rock-bound shoreline with those big Atlantic waves crashing against the granite. It's so dramatic, so beautiful, absolutely iconic. And, standing guard all along that coast? The lighthouses. These things are just beautiful. They're symbols of the state's deep maritime history, scattered all over the coast and islands, and every single one has its own story.
And of course, you can't have a conversation about Maine without talking about its world-famous lobster. It's so central to the state's identity, it's basically a mascot at this point. So yeah, these images together, that's the Maine we all think we know.
But is that really all there is to it? Just rocky coasts, lighthouses, and lobster rolls? I mean, that's the picture they put on the license plate. But the real story of Maine, its land, its history, and its people, is so much more complex and honestly, way more surprising. So let's start with the land itself. Because Maine's geography isn't just scenic, it's this incredible story of extremes. It was forged by these immense geological forces that created a landscape that's really unlike anywhere else.
First off, just look at where it sits on the map. It's tucked way up there in the far northeastern corner of the country, a true geographic outlier. And get this, it is the only state in the entire U.S. that shares a border with just one other state, New Hampshire. Everything else is either Canada or the Atlantic Ocean.
So what's filling all that space? Trees. An absolutely mind-boggling 83% of Maine is covered in forest. That makes it the most heavily forested state in the entire nation. Seriously, they don't call it the pine tree state for nothing. This is a real-deal wilderness on a scale that's hard to even imagine anywhere else on the East Coast.
And remember that famous rocky coast? Well, it actually has a name. It's a drowned coast. This whole landscape was carved out by glaciers during the last ice age. So when those glaciers finally retreated and the sea levels rose, the ocean just flooded into all the valleys, turning former mountaintops into thousands of little islands. It's the reason why its tidal coastline stretches for an incredible 3,500 miles. This totally unique landscape was captured perfectly by the poet Edna St. Vincent Millay, who was a Mainer herself. Her words here, they're not just a pretty description. They are literally the geological story of the drowned coast in 4 simple lines. This amazing view of mountains, woods, and islands, all in a single glance. So the land is rugged, right? Well, it turns out Maine's path to actually becoming a state was just as rocky and complicated. It was a really long, contentious journey that was born out of the single biggest political crisis of its time. Long before it was called Maine, this land was home to the Wabanaki peoples for thousands of years. European settlement kicked off with this intense competition between the French and the English back in the early 1600s. But here's the crazy part. For nearly 170 years, from 1652 all the way to 1820, Maine wasn't a state at all. It was just a district of Massachusetts. So how did it finally break away? The answer is tied directly to the Missouri Compromise. The nation was fiercely debating the expansion of slavery, and this very fragile deal was struck. To keep the balance of power in Congress, Maine would be admitted as a free state, which would perfectly offset Missouri's admission as a slave state. Think about that for a second. Maine was literally born from the nation's deepest, most painful division. That complicated history, as you can imagine, really shaped the people who call Maine home. And when you look closely at the demographics, you find some really fascinating, totally unexpected details that kind of challenge that stereotype of the classic old-school Mainer. First, just a quick fun fact for you. There's something totally unique about its name. Maine is the only state in the Union with a one-syllable name. Simple, direct, memorable. Now, when we look at ancestry, the English and Irish roots, that's kind of what you'd expect in New England. But look closer at that third largest group, French. This is a huge clue to a powerful cultural influence that often gets completely overlooked. And here's the result of that influence. A remarkable 5.28% of households in Maine speak French at home. That's the highest percentage of any state in the country. Yep, even higher than Louisiana. This is largely because of centuries of immigration from French-speaking Canada.
especially Quebec and Acadia right next door. So where do all these people live? You can see it so clearly here. They're mostly clustered down in the south. This makes Maine the least densely populated state east of the Mississippi River. That vast green area up there, that's the Northwoods, a huge, sparsely populated wilderness that creates two very different Maines within one state.
So how do you tie all this together? You've got the rugged geography, the contentious history, this surprisingly independent mix of people. Well, you can find a big clue in the state's powerful one-word motto. Dirigo, it's Latin, and it means I lead. Not we lead, but I lead. It's a statement of singular guidance and fierce independence, a lot like the North Star that often goes with it in state imagery.
And this whole spirit of self-reliance is right there on the state seal. You've got a farmer and a seaman representing the two pillars of Maine's traditional economy, the land and the sea. This isn't just an image, it's a reflection of Dirigo, a history defined by rugged individuals who lead their own way, completely dependent on their own hard work. So from its birth in a national compromise to its unique blend of wilderness and culture, Maine has always carved its own path. The state's motto is, I lead. So the real question is, in a world that demands more connection than ever before, where will this fiercely independent state lead next?